Welcome to the International College of Dentists, Chronicles of Outstanding Leaders in Dentistry. This day, I am really proud to say that we have our guest, Dr. Gordon Christensen, who is the founder and director of Practical Clinical Courses, a continuing education organization for dental professionals worldwide. And also, he is the founding member with his wife, Rilla, of Clinical Research Associates, a research entity that researches all aspects of dentistry worldwide and publishes the findings in the CRA newsletter that is received by over 100,000 dentists and is read in 10 different languages, and I'm sure in many more languages as well that are forthcoming. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. And we're here to learn all about you. You're a visionary, you're a scholar, you're an educator, you're passionate. And what I'd like to start with is basically get to know the Gordon that grew up and a little bit about your family as a boy.
I was born in a small town in northern Utah, Tashanka. It was a town of about 5,000 people. It was an agricultural area. My parents had little education. My father had a third-grade education. My mother had a high school education. And from the day I was born, I was destined for college. They had no reservation in their minds that that was to be my goal. And so I had no real choice. I had no other thought in mind. And I grew up loving the outdoors. I had animals throughout my growing up years. I loved to go up into the mountains and hike and shoot guns and ride motorcycles, and then we had no all-terrain vehicles, but we did have we had smaller.
You have since found those, right?
I have definitely found those in later years. Went to a very rural high school, graduating class of about 100, with lots of activities as a youth. Not being a large high school, there were many opportunities for debating. I was on the debate and extemporaneous speaking teams right through junior high, high school, and college in that northern Utah area.
Were you an only child?
No, I had a brother 12 years older who was in the Second World War, and therefore he left about the time I was turning from an animal to a human, and basically about that time I took over the role of only child, and my brother was then gone into Italy, Africa, and survived. Almost every person who went with him at that time from the local high school was killed. They were on the beaches of Normandy, and he survived because he could type. That's an amazing thing. Now everybody can type, but then he could not go out into the front line because they needed clerks. And
so they also needed that skill set. So did his military experience sort of open up aspects of the military for you as you were going through?
It did. I did military from junior high, high school, and college. I was in ROTC, and then became involved with a commission, non-dental first, and then dental, and stayed in the military for a while, and then got into dental education.
Now, you mentioned your parents and their background, but how did dentistry get into the picture?
I am a Mormon, an LDS person, and my bishop, a bishop is like a priest or a rabbi. They supervise about 400 or 500 people. And as a youth, this man was a role model for me because he was a dentist, and he was also a bishop, which you serve for a term of 5 years, give or take. And so I watched him, became involved with him, and I was very excited about it. My mother, of course, thought Gordon was going to be a doctor, and it didn't matter which kind of doctor. So as that evolved, I gradually became very interested from junior high on to become a dentist. So I aimed at it, and as most things in my life, I've shot directly at it. So I went through school very rapidly and was a dentist at 23.
So you must have missed a couple of years or accelerated through both college and dental school as well.
College together.
So you went to dental school at the University of Southern California.
That is correct, yes.
And what was it like at that time in the 50s?
It was a form of Hell Week extended for 4 years, as most dental schools were then. Thankfully, they're becoming more humanistic. Excellent education, brainwashed as probably you were to think that this was the finest school on the earth, which it was good in many aspects then. And the interest in dentistry, though, was very, very stimulated as I learned that I had hands. I didn't know that, although I had done a lot of handsy things as a kid, woodwork and auto mechanics and motorcycle mechanics, many things I had to use hands, but I didn't realize that they were as good as they were, and it worked out very well in dental school.
But then having dental school and a dental degree alone wasn't sufficient. Did you move right on to your specialty of prosthodontics and training at University of Washington, or did you have a hiatus there?
As probably with you. I was frustrated about what to go into because I knew nothing about dentistry. I had no idea that it was as broad as it is, and therefore I thought at first I'll be an orthodontist, and then I thought, well, that's more narrow than I would really like. Then I thought, well, oral surgery, and well, that's pretty narrow too. I went in the military for 2 years as a young person right out of dental school, and that was just before the Vietnam War.
In the Army?
In the Army, yes, at Fort Lewis, Washington, and became excited about all areas of dentistry. And then I thought, well, what can I go into that would be broad and still somewhat specialized? And that became prosthodontics. And then I went to University of Washington, went through a restorative dentistry course, which qualified me for the prosthodontic boards, and then was recruited to go to University of Kentucky, where at age 28 I became a department chairman. I knew nothing about anything. I was probably dangerous, but in the meantime I did chair a department then of operative dentistry, which included a fairly broad role. It was then expanded to restorative dentistry, and I knew little or nothing about half of the aspects I was attempting to teach, but we learned very rapidly. And
well, you were a founding member there.
I came in just as the first class was entering its senior year.
And that must have been extremely exciting. I mean, the opportunity to open up a brand new school.
It was. Because we did things then that they're still reinventing now, 50 years later, almost 50 years later.
Well, what are some of the things that
Here's a good example.
Okay.
You probably, as I went through a curriculum where we had 2 years of basic science, promptly forgot that, and went on to 2 years of clinical. The school that we started at Kentucky, all of us were young. I was the youngest. We decided, why don't we just integrate those things? And you're still hearing that reinvented now, where we had people in their first week of dental school giving injections to one another.
You had the horizontal and vertical integration.
Exactly, concomitant with their basic science anatomy and their basic science physiology. And similarly, we involved them with public health projects out in the field where they had to make decisions that were not spoon-fed by faculty. We called it a vertical curriculum, which you've heard many times, and it worked exceedingly well. I was very, very pleased with it.
Well, now it's a novel idea.
Yes.
Whose time has come again.
Yeah, it's come again.
So,
it recycles about every 10 or 20 years, right.
But then did you go from there to the University of Colorado and help launch that program as well?
I was recruited to University of Colorado as one of 2 clinical faculty members. Robert Schallhorn, a well-known periodontist, and myself were the 2 first clinical people to come. He had the bloody part, I had the non-bloody part, and we involved ourselves with teaching right on the lawn of University of Colorado Medical Center, because the school was not constructed at that point. Little by little it became constructed and then became a viable entity in dental education.
And really a very different type of school in terms of what the state relationship to the school was and the needs of the communities at large, right?
Yes, the students were required to go out into the community for a year of service after going through the dental school, which I think is a wonderful idea. I'd like to see it instituted everywhere. I think we'd solve many of the public health problems.
I'd vote for you.
Yeah, I think we would solve many of the public health problems we now have.
I agree with you. But you had then continued. I understand you received a PhD at the University of Denver.
Yes, that is correct.
And how did you decide to continue on with your training, your education, augmenting your clinical skills with something totally different in psychology?
It was very refreshing. 12 years out of dental school, I completed the PhD. after having been a department chairman, after having been a full professor. Therefore, I could not go to the same school I was a full professor rank, because they would not allow you to do that. I had to go to the University of Denver, which was some miles away. We involved ourselves there with something I felt very deficient in. I'd been so rapidly interested in the biologic and physical sciences that I'd totally forgotten the social sciences. And I thought, Christensen, you're completely deficient in that area.
You were ahead of your time there, too. I mean, we're still catching up to the social sciences now.
Well, I thought, why not just do something completely aside from dentistry? So when I applied to University of Denver, Denver University is the proper sequence, I told the then chairman of my committee, I said, I have some things I want to do, and you have some things you want me to do. And I don't care how long or short it is, just tell me what it is and I'll do it. And we put together our ideas, mine and his, to satisfy their requirements and my desires. And it ended up as education and psychology. Not educational psychology, but education and psychology. Extremely interesting. It broadened my horizons enormously, and I use it every day of my life.
But your doctoral thesis focused on?
Interaction of various health professions in academic medical centers. I went from coast to coast, University of Maryland to University of California, and looked at what made health professionals want to interact rather than segregate.
And what are the answers to that? I'd like to know.
Well, they were extremely interesting to me. I found that many schools, and now that we'll keep in mind this is many years ago, this would be 70,
That's all right.
around 70, 71. I found that schools that had administrators who were broad-based, such as the classic person, Joe Volcker, who was at the University of Alabama. Joe developed a medical center there that was completely eclectic, and he, being a dentist and a PhD researcher, was able to integrate basic science and clinical science and be able to have the status to integrate with them, all people in all areas, including the physicians. And he created what was, in that study I did of 96 centers, that school was the most integrated. And they had shared research laboratories, they shared clinical teaching in hospital and in non-hospital outpatient areas. They involved themselves with public health projects, and that became a very observable, visible example of how to interact in an academic health center versus other schools I'll leave unnamed that had individual fiefdoms connected by plumbing.
So it still is that human aspect.
Yes.
And I think you embody many of these characteristics in the work that you do of bringing together groups nationally, internationally, specialties, different disciplines to bear. What do you see as the key elements that you have that other future leaders in dentistry can learn from?
I came from an environment where I was the lowest form of life, coming from a family with little money, with little education. And I didn't know that I was any different from more privileged people who had all the money there was and all the education they needed. So I acted like them. In other words, I thought I'm equal with them, therefore I won't feel inferior. And as I look at others, particularly racial groups who might feel inferior, I see the same potential to say, I'm equal with anybody else. Right. Give me the goals and let's set the horizons and we'll go for it. My mother, as I said, always stimulated me toward education and always told me, well, you can do that. Just because this kid lives up on the hill and we don't, you can do that. And I think maybe that's what drove me, was a lack of recognition that I was, in fact, very different.
And no limitations.
No limitations
you
whatsoever.
You didn't have that sense that you were in any way unable to move forward.
Yes.
In fact, you probably had the accelerated wind behind you.
I've always been, I'm told, relatively organized and time efficient. In other words, I'm going to do, even as a child, as much as I can in a given period of time. and still have time now in my planner for the family. That goes in first. Family goes in first.
Yes.
And second goes religion, and third goes profession. And it's always been that order. And they've all got to be there, though. If I leave one out, now I become very cloistered into that one specific thing.
And that balance between the three, you've given
Yes.
the ordering and the
Yes.
priority, has that shifted over time?
It's more heavily family now than it was early.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your family. I
Yes.
know that your wife, Rila, has been a strong and continuing soulmate, partner,
Yes, no question. We've had for
colleague.
46 years of marriage now. She came from a highly educated family. Her father had a PhD in sociology. Her mother was a librarian, very intelligent person. Her brother is a dentist. Her uncle was a dentist. And small family, Italian immigrants. Her father was the first Italian immigrant in his particular area in Los Angeles. He became a high school principal, very influential and well-loved person, now dead 15 years.
So you met while you were in dental school?
Met
Is
while
that-
we were in dental school, and that's an interesting phenomena there. Anyone listening to this video who is of spiritual bent will understand this. I was accepted at a number of dental schools, as undoubtedly you were. And I opened the letters thinking I was not going to be accepted. Well, I was accepted, and accepted, and then I look at the pile. And the ones that I thought I was going to go to attend did not appear to be attractive to me. But one that I had not even seen rose out of the pile of papers. And I went to that one, which was Southern Cal. And that's obviously where the good Lord had planned to have a wife for me and children and a career together that has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
She is what I do not have, and I might have a couple of things she doesn't have, but the blending has been perfect.
That kind of matchmaking has a
Yes.
magic to it.
Oh.
And like you said, a purpose as well. Now, you were good fortune to have wonderful 3 children, I understand.
Yes, yes.
And following in the footsteps of
Yes.
both of you.
Yes.
On one side, 2 sons
Yes.
that are in the dental profession, and the other, a daughter in
Yes.
education.
Yes. It
Tell
has
me a
been
little
very
bit.
interesting. And again, maybe I've learned something from that experience. I did not in any way become coercive or demanding of the sons or daughter. I gave them rewards as they did something good. If they achieved a given level of grades and they kept themselves morally acceptable, I would participate with them financially in a car, as an example, or whatever we happen to be aiming for.
Nice rewards.
And that worked.
good.
That worked. They, at age 16, could drive. They ended up with a used car that was acceptable, and they learned auto mechanics from that. They also learned that if they did certain things, they had a reward.
Yeah.
I've always felt that way. I've been a Boy Scout master a lot of my life, and had many, many, many Eagle Scouts that have gone through programs that I have been administering. And again, rewards. They do something right, they get a reward. They get a beefsteak, they get an airplane ride, they get a backpack or whatever. And I've always felt that works, and apparently it has in my life. But the 2 sons and the daughter went a given direction in education, became something. And then only after that did they come back and say, well, here's a good example. The one son went into the military.
Yeah.
He was an Air Force pilot. He came to me one day and he said, Dad, I love flying, but I don't think I want to be, quote, a bus driver when I get out of the military. He didn't want to sit in a plane. Now, some would be turned on to that.
Right.
He was not. So he said, I think I'll go to dental school. Well, that's back in the 70s. Even then, $100,000 later, he was out, see. So they went a direction they felt correct with. He was a bachelor's level cartographist in cartography, map reading.
Yes.
And
And then found his way
yeah,
through the map back to you.
back to me, yeah. And all 3 of them did the same thing. They went one way first and then went the dental route. Or in the case of the girl, she went education.
Well, I think we have the good fortune of having the time to spend with our children and their children and see that evolution. I think that is important. I want to get back to some of the things that you've done, because you didn't stop with your experience in dental education, your PhD in education and psychology, your specialty in prosthodontics. But you have several other specialty areas in terms of osseointegration and implantology. You have continued to reach and pursue and achieve in new areas of clinical specialization yet to be recognized formally.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that, and what are some of the next things on the horizon for your own personal specialization?
Good questions. As I look back over the years, now many years in dentistry, including dental school, I would now have 50 years. And looking back, I think the thing that's kept me alive professionally, I know the thing that's kept me alive professionally is that every year at Christmas time, I and my wife go somewhere. Used to be when we had no money, we'd stay home, but then it got into places where we would like to go. We did Hawaii many years. I would go and sit on a lonely beach alone, and she would stay in the hotel room alone, and we would think for a full day about what in this next year in all aspects of life would make us creative, make us serve our fellow man better, and educate us well. And each year I've picked something, let's stay professionally for a minute, that would excite me that year. About, not quite 20 years ago, it was implants.
And that was early then.
Yes, that was early. I was one of the first ones.
Brennemark, that's right.
We were the first ones in the state of Utah, myself and an oral surgeon, to do the Brennemark orientation. And soon I found, although I'm a prosthodontist, that I'd like to do the surgery as well. So then I went to Gothenburg, did the surgery course, and with Brennemark himself, and ended up coming back and beginning then to do surgery. Well, the example I'm making is each year I've decided on something. One year it was porcelain veneers. Another year it was learning to use a computer way back. All of the various things that have come along have been mentally stimulated by my thought process that says, I'm deficient in this area, I don't know that area, don't know that area, so I've bounced into them, and I've never been bored in dentistry, ever. In fact, I'd like to do another 50 years, because I think there's that much going on. And what's going to be happening in the future? Probably in my prosthodontic area, it's without question the computerization of the milling, the CAD-CAM orientation. We're deeply involved right now. My wife is administering the study of all of the new concepts in at least 10 different varieties of mechanisms that computer-driven milling, not only for ceramics, but for, as you know, metals. So that area I see being a significant jump forward from what we've seen in the past with the
not only with accuracy, but also with the ability to serve more.
Unbelievable,
in many ways.
Yes.
So
and we hope to get it down at a cost where the public can afford it better. I think eventually it will.
I think like everything else, it's just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time, absolutely. So I see it going into that direction. Other things that would excite me in the future, the implant area is growing, but it's still only less than 10% of general practitioners. And I'm constantly harping that I would like to see general practitioners placing implants into healthy patients with good bone. There are the two qualifications. Healthy, this means physically and mentally, patients with good bone. And just as most of endo is done by general practitioners, most of pros is done by all the specialties but oral surgery and orthodontics are done primarily by general practitioners. And why is implantology lagging there? I'd like to see that one change and allow more ability to serve people, especially the very debilitated ones, such as the edentulous population of some 50 million right now.
Well, it definitely gives people a different functional and aesthetic outlook, and has made a major change in dentistry overall. But I really like the practice that you and Rilla have of the annual time to think and rethink of what each of you can do individually and then together for the next step in life,
Yes.
the year,
Yes.
whatever the increment is, I will try to adopt that and take it. But also, given all the things that you have seen, you're at a point where you're also considering some new directions for yourself and making some decisions possibly soon. Could you tell us about that?
Dental education, as is well evidenced nationally, is in a crisis, a financial crisis. And where do we go from here?
Right.
I have been placed on a American Dental Association committee that's trying to raise $1 billion for dental education, but even $1 billion, when put down into the interest, is still a pittance for each of the 50 some odd schools. And I've always been involved with education, and I may be doing another educational venture with beginning another school. It appears that I'm going to be doing that, and I would be delighted to do that. I think we need some emphasis in dental education that would allow a very realistic orientation toward the new dentistry, not the dentistry I was graduated into, which was pain-oriented and need-oriented. Right. It's now at least half of the American dollar coming into general dentistry, as you know, is elective. And it's a totally different dentistry, which has been a blessing and a curse.
Right.
It's been a blessing in that we're helping people psychologically as well as physiologically. It's been a curse because we've had a level of dishonesty come into the profession that's appalling at the moment. That's one of my biggest frustrations as we see it.
Well, it's one of the things that as you take on this new direction, you're able to start integrating again, this integration of the latest science, the latest technology earlier, so that the general practitioner is able to move forward in a way that allows them to be on a stronger and a different foundation than they have been over time.
There are numerous deficiencies, in my opinion, in our current graduates, who I see every year in various courses that are directed primarily toward the person up to 5 years out of school. We're seeing the four areas that would be very identifiable by any general practitioner who's new. We know almost nothing about occlusion as new graduates. We're basically very deficient in the implant area. We have little knowledge in the aesthetic area, where they must make decisions the day they're out of school, and we have zero information in 9/10 of the schools in practice administration. There are four major areas that are completely void and need immediate attention, because as that new person gets out well over $100,000 in debt, he or she needs to make a rapid orientation toward not only making quality care, doing quality care, but also to earn enough to feed their families. And right now they're ill prepared.
And through that kind of vision, I think that it will really help the profession at large if we're able to move it from one school to the whole group of schools and then move it out. I'd like to switch topics a little bit and move to both PCC and CRA.
Okay, very well.
And I want you to tell me a little bit about the initiating vision that you and Rilla had for CRA, which has really become an international catalytic phenomenon that has met a need.
It's a very, very interesting story. I was serving, this would be 1975, I was serving on the American Dental Association, then called Council on Dental Materials and Devices, which I was on for many years. And as you know, you go to a council meeting in Chicago, and you would sit and evaluate piles and piles and piles and piles of research.
Very active council at that time.
And then make decisions as to whether that product or products should be approved. And I thought the process was wonderful, that I had no real criticism of the process, other than often it was so late that it did not help the practitioner significantly. And I thought, why not start a private enterprise group that would have no financial orientation, it would be nonprofit, and use practitioners and a support staff of basic scientists. So this would be aimed primarily at how does it work in practice, but is it sound basic science-wise? So 2 levels.
Right.
And it just popped through my mind. I mentioned it to a couple of the people I was at University of Colorado, and a couple of the other faculty members. Christensen, you'll go bankrupt in a month. Well, it's now 30 years later, and we haven't gone bankrupt. Of course, that's related to my Mormon upbringing. We never spent more than we earned, ever.
But the business model was way ahead of its time. It still is ahead of its time.
Yes,
And
yes.
so could you tell me a little bit about how that design came about, the no private support, the balance?
That, I was riding from Provo, Utah to Denver, where I had a practice while we were making the transition from full-time education into private enterprise. I was driving because it was snowing so hard the planes weren't flying, and I had patients the next day and needed the money.
Yeah.
So I was driving over the Rocky Mountains, and it was such a brilliant, bright night because although the snowstorm had been heavy, it subsided, and it was just beautiful white virgin snow with a full moon. And I was driving along. I could have turned the lights out on the car, observing the road and thinking that idea. Everybody says it won't work, it won't work, it won't work. I think it'll work. And then I thought, but it won't work if we take money from companies. But we need money to run. So I was really in cognitive dissonance there because I could not really figure out which way to go. Is it money? Isn't it money? Is it money? Isn't it money? My wife cinched that. She said, it isn't money. And Rella brought that forth, and she said, if we do it for money, we're dead. And so the initial business orientation was probably simulated by her more than myself. That is, we can't do it for money. And we ended up now with a legitimate tax-deductible foundation, which is the only one in dentistry that does this kind of thing. And that orientation has been probably the saving grace of CRA. There is no involvement with companies that is financially or in any other way reward-oriented. If a product is good, it will make its way into our publication. If it is not good because of quite obvious legal challenges, we don't report it. And if it isn't in there, people will call on the phone and often they'll get a...
Why isn't it in there?
Yeah, then they'll find out, well, it didn't make these kinds of goals. The company's now working on it. So if a product is very good, we publish it. If a product is not so good, that information goes back to the manufacturer. The manufacturers want to know.
So the relationship between you and the manufacturer stays solid and open, and the practitioners receive the positive findings and are able to use what comes out.
That's the way it's oriented, yes, and it has worked well that way. There have been a few legal challenges over the years, some threatening, others illegitimate.
Any ones that sort of gave you a sense to waver about the next steps for CRA? Or
we've had some challenges where you receive cease and desist letters that say you're wrong, stop. And now Rella comes in because she is the ultimate of perfectionists. And I say that in a good way. As you know, perfectionism can be called a disease too, but she is a pragmatist perfectionist, if I could call it that.
Positive attribute.
Yeah. Well, she is the ultimate recorder when she does a research project. Her research papers are impeccable. And so in came, and I won't name the company because it's still around, in came a company with a disinfectant that was to be diluted. And in its original percentage, it was great. It killed everything. It burned the hair right off your head. But in the meantime, diluted, it was worse than toilet water. So she reported that. Cease and desist letters come in. The owner and the attorneys come in. Rella brings out the research. You don't like that? You redo it. You redo it. And if you get a different answer, we'll be glad to say it. Never returned. 9 years later, the federal government came in and closed their factory down. But it took 9 years.
So you were a precursor.
Yes.
And they had a heads up.
Yes.
but no action was taken on
No
their
action
part.
was taken. Mm-mm.
How do you decide what to look at? I mean, there's so many things, as you
Yes.
said, it's exponential what's coming out in dentistry.
Rella has been the director of CRA for most of its existence, and its success is primarily oriented to her. I had the original idea, we blended the idea. I've always been a senior consultant to them, but we decided early on we had to have practical people in there, and I've had study clubs all over the earth for all of my career. And so we selected a half dozen study clubs spread all over the United States. I don't think we had anything outside then. This would be 1976. And I knew the people personally. I still have some of those clubs. They've all died. I've outlived them. But seriously, they're all younger people in them. And so they were people we knew. We knew how well they did dentistry. We knew they were making money doing dentistry. It wasn't just a hobby. But then we needed a basic science base. That's where CRA started. But how do we determine which products?
Right.
Now there's a nucleus of well over 400 practitioners, and each month they receive what we call a yellow sheet. It has the new products on it, and then it says what should we be looking at.
Okay, so
So
you use
in
a
comes this
consensus
information.
process.
The information comes in. We should be on digital radiography or whatever, and then of course I see about 60,000 dentists a year speaking, and have for many, many years. And I get that from the audiences. You and I have spoken together on programs, and you know how much you learn from just questions. Or if you ask something, how many have digital radiography? And 2 hands go up, you know, we better get on that, because other countries are way ahead of us, as an example, right now in that area.
Well, you have been ahead of your time there, given, as you know, that the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research recently just awarded several dental practice research networks, opening up the door to a more formal way of conducting clinical trials and clinical studies. But you've been doing this all along for many, many years, and have seen the value of the questions raised at chairside. And so do you see a time where, with information technology, that there can be an expanded way of communicating this emerging research agenda built within your clinical research associates program that will percolate even more beyond the 400? And
yes, I would certainly like to see that happen. We have had praise and we've had criticism for the way we disseminate information. I write every month in several journals, but they're at, well, yes, there's
I wanted
the
to
ADA
highlight
one.
the ADA because
That's been almost 15 years every month.
15 years at the ADA Journal, and I think what I always like about your editorial is the provocative aspects. This is April 2005, and the title is "The Major Part of Dentistry You May Be Neglecting," and it's about occlusal equilibration.
Yes.
And I think that this particular series that you say now 15 years,
Yes.
it really stimulates discussions. There's no question.
There's no question.
It has been controversial.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Not
yes.
this topic alone, but topics
Many
you've
of them,
raised.
Many of them, yes.
And I think the issue of being willing to be in the forefront and raise questions and promote questions is what you have continued to push for the field.
I've tried to do that. This editorial provokes letters to the editors.
Yes,
And
I like that.
everyone has a dozen different thoughts about occlusion. The situation, though, with dissemination of information, our thought has been, to get back to your original question, that we'd like to get it out as fast as possible.
Right.
That was the initial stimulus to make CRE. That is, if a subject is pertinent and it's still gurgling in some research institute, it's in an institute or it's in a NIDR somewhere and it's being researched, but they're using it now.
Decisions have to be made today.
We got to get out now. So we've always felt we do a research project that's published within days. but then we're criticized because they say, well, you don't have peer review. Well, we have 100,000 people reading it. If we have something wrong, then I'm going to be in jail, not only from the practitioner's standpoint, but from the standpoint of the overall problem that would occur if they do something wrong to their patient. And we've said that it's okay. In fact, I carry heavy insurance called errors and omissions insurance to say these things.
Right.
The peer review is, in fact, in CRA. We don't make a big point of it, but every specialty and general dentistry has numerous people to whom the newsletter is sent before it's published for observation. We don't say we have these peer reviewers and publish it, but they're definitely there. But the 100,000 who read it are the major peer review. Is something really working? They know it or they don't know it. Yeah.
Well, you have a set methodology, you have an approach, you are using the input of experts. I think when something is open like that and people know what it is and how it's being done, you're adding and fitting a niche. I wanted also to have you address the practical clinical courses.
Yes.
And I guess a very strong partner to CRA. Maybe you can say something about this.
This group, Practical Clinical Courses, is a for-profit organization. The other one is obviously nonprofit. How did the title of this program evolve? Practical Clinical Courses.
Yes.
That is, when they come to a course, I want them to go home and change their behavior, which, as you know, is the goal of all education.
Right.
Education is supposed to change behavior. If it doesn't, it's useless. It's just floating factors in your brain. Therefore, when they come to a course, I want them to go home and institute something tomorrow. Our motto there is learn today and implement it tomorrow, use tomorrow. And the courses in that group are, well, about, I would have to say over the years, I've had 45,000 hours of delivering continuing education. And each time I go out, I just prepared a program for tomorrow. I'll do them almost the minutes before I do the program because I want to know, in talking to my host, what's pertinent in Washington, D.C., what's pertinent in San Francisco, because they're different as night and day. If I speak in Boston one day and L.A. the next day, it's like two different planets. Therefore, I want to know what's hot in L.A., and I'll put that course together, and it'll be practical for L.A. or for San Francisco. That group serves thousands, 65,000 dentists a year. We put videos out around the earth. I donate, and I'm glad to do that, to any legitimate, altruistic, service-oriented group. I donate the videos, and they are in third world everywhere. I see myself talking Hindu or
How'd you
whatever.
Like that?
Yeah. So they just dub it over my mouth and use it. So we donate to schools everywhere that are legitimately in need and don't have money, but obviously have to make money too. So in first world, we sell the videos.
Well, I think clearly that's a balancing issue as well, so that you can give to those in need and contribute to those that can
That's
participate.
what we're trying to do. Yes.
That balance seems to be part and parcel of how you've managed your professional career and your family career. I wanted to sort of address back with CRA. There's a transition that's ongoing.
There is at the moment.
And could you tell me about that?
Rella has been, and I repeat again, has been the driving force there. I've been the mouth. If you know biblical things, I'm the Aaron, she's the Moses. I'm the mouthpiece. And I'm out a lot, too much. And she's home a lot. She does a fine job speaking, but would prefer to be home in the research lab. I just slide food under the door every 3 or 4 hours, and she's fine. That's about it. She loves it. So it has been a wonderful team. However, we know we can't last forever, so we have transitioned to some younger people, middle-aged people who have been with us for many years and who will carry on in the same tradition CRA has been going. And I've started a number of younger speakers myself who will continue doing the same kinds of things I've been doing in continuing education.
And you'll continue being a consultant?
Yes, yes. And I I am about as healthy as I was when I was 20, so until the good
You
Lord
look
strikes
great.
me down, I'll continue going until I have to stop. No, I don't have a retirement plan.
Well, I think retirement plans are sort of out nowadays, right?
For
the
me, they
issue
certainly
is
are, yes.
the phases of life that we go through
Yes.
and the stages. So tell me a little bit about your hobbies, because you clearly are keeping yourself in
Yes.
shape, and you
Yes.
must be very physically active. And
I love to do the outdoor kinds of things. We live on a small ranch in Mapleton, Utah. We have horses, dogs, cats. I'm involved with motorcycles constantly. We do motorcycle courses during the summers. Last year we did Yosemite, where we took 20 bikes with dentists and whatever they took with them, spouses or whatever.
Mountain bikes?
No, these are Harleys.
Harleys.
Yeah, this summer we're
Oh
doing
my goodness, that's
Yellowstone, and so I love that kind of activity. We're into backpacking. As I said, I was a scoutmaster for many years, and have been on a lot of the high mountains in the Rocky Mountain area.
Horseback riding?
Horseback riding, yeah. I'm just getting a new horse coming up. very
Photography?
shortly. Photography, yeah, lots of different things. But probably the one that's most time-consuming is religion. I spent a lot of time with my church. Recently, we completed a 2-year sabbatical in Los Angeles as directors of the Los Angeles Temple Mormon Visitor Center. We had roughly 250,000 visitors while we were there. That's a lot of handshaking. It's almost 1,000 people a day.
And people from all over the world.
Everywhere, literally everywhere on the earth.
And questions.
We had young female missionaries. Over the time we were there, we had about 75 young female missionaries and a number of couples. They represented languages from everywhere. The involvement socially was fantastic. Again, my wife and I blended. We had to decorate the thing for the holidays, Christmas holidays, thousands of lights and trees and so forth, and many, many visitors. The last Christmas we had over 50 musical programs we brought in, and then people from all faiths. The last program I ran had Catholics, born-again Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, agnostics, whatever, all in the same group, talking about the same kinds of things, like how do we make people work together, how do we make people feel better about themselves, how do we get the most out of everybody's potential. So we're not aiming at what's the color of Christ's hair, or did Muhammad set the whole thing, or did Christ, or whoever. That's out of the picture. It's how do we work together?
Basic principles of different religions.
Of living together, yeah. We're all going the same place.
Now, you've used your faith also to extend to the contribution of dentistry in other countries. And
we just returned from India last week, where 4 of us spoke to thousands of dentists in Mumbai, Chennai, New Delhi, here and there around India. We had large audiences of all faiths, but our faith had a banner in the front saying, "Here we are," and then we had dental supply companies supporting the hotel food and meeting room, and each one of those was 1 or 2 days in which we involved ourselves with all areas of dentistry, and these have been very successful. We've done that in several third world countries now, and we'll do it again next year. That it's about a 10-day adventure to do it.
And a little bit more time to plan in advance, and then afterwards to follow up, I'm sure, on all of the things that people have seen, and also what is asked for as a follow-up.
Yes.
Now, you've received many honors and awards, and so a question that comes to mind is, which of these sort of stand out more than any others? I'm
not a real award kind of person.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I'm really not. And I appreciate all of those who have recognized something we might have done.
Yeah.
I think the biggest reward for me is not a tangible one, but rather it's one where I see an audience that comes up with thousands of questions and wants to know some things. I think one thing that sticks out in my mind, and I'm going to be religious for a minute.
That's all right.
Mormons and Jews are kind of alike. about the same number. There are about 12 million in the world right now of each. Both have been persecuted. Both have had challenges that were illegitimate, I think. And for years, I have donated a lot of our videos to Hadassah University in Jerusalem and other Jewish schools, as well as Muslim schools and whatever. But in the meantime, this one stuck out because here is the Alpha Omega, the Jewish fraternity, which honored me with an international award some years ago. And that sticks out in my mind because there was just a sense of kinship there that was not really religious, because we're totally different. One's Christ, one isn't. But it was just the feeling of love, of interrelationship that was, we're all going the same place. That's what it was all about.
And common understanding of the experiences that
and
have
we're
preceded.
all trying to help people. That's it. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. I wanted to ask, with all the things that you have done and experienced and your values, what is your vision for dentistry and health overall in the coming decade, 2 decades? Excellent
question. There are so many good things that we have taken advantage of in particularly North America with the healthcare systems that we have. We're going through an extremely strong evolution that you know probably better than I, being in the position you're in. I'm pleased and I'm dissatisfied with where we're going. I'm pleased that more people are being served. I'm dissatisfied that business has become so involved with it. My brother was president of the largest insurance company on the earth during there are only 2 of us in the family. He was president of a major insurance company and president of a lot of other things. And he's a Stanford MBA, which is the antithesis of where I came from. Yet we come together constantly, and although he's older than I, he is a consultant to me in many business aspects. I think he's mellowed business-wise, and I've mellowed to accept some business orientation. If we're trying to, as an example with this piece you're seeing here, if I don't advertise, I don't sell. If I don't sell, the information doesn't get out. So there has to be some kind of blend of these things, and I think we've gone too far business in healthcare right now. So again, moving the balance back. Absolutely. If I go in and I say I can't wear, although it's not a problem for me, I can't wear latex gloves, I need something else, and by the way, I can't wear that brand name, and they say you can't have that, I think that's improper. I think that the health professional should have a lot more orientation toward leadership in healthcare rather than the businesses and the dollar and the bottom line. I'm very frustrated with what I'm seeing right now with my own state, with the hospitals they're in, where business has far too heavy of a hand. I've been a very avid anti-managed care fighter ever since it started. I've put my neck out innumerable times with cease and desist orders, and I will continue to. So I see healthcare as a very positive thing, but I see healthcare being far, far too controlled by business as we speak. So I would like to see these major diseases and conditions of mankind overcome by proper research and proper clinical implementation. But I would like to see the professionals running it more and the businesses running it less. So I do see a significant need for health practitioners to awaken and as a team fight, it's the best word I can say, the managed care orientation that we have so heavily. It took Britain 60 years to get back to a level of adequate care. And we're right in the heat of the battle right now in America. Britain's coming out, we're going in. Well, and part of your new directions that you've alluded to give the opportunity to prepare the next generation to be able to understand the roles that they will have to play, because oftentimes we step back from issues that relate to managing the care to focusing on the provision of the care. Absolutely, and we need to be able to do both. I also see an enormous need to take care of the older generation that we have not had in the past. When I was born, the typical person was dying at 50, now it's 80, and that's amazing in one lifetime, isn't it? What's happened, and I don't consider my lifetime over.
Right.
So as we observe this coming 20 years, there's no way we're going to emphasize just the youth. We've got to really start emphasizing the physically active and mentally alert elderly person. And we're going to see more and more of those who continue to work productively on into their 80s and 90s. I was listening to an author the other day at 94 still writing books, and I think, well, fantastic. How much better could he be prepared than having 94 years of observing life than the 25-year-old who doesn't even know which way's up yet?
Right.
Yeah. So I do see the elderly population really being a major role in the future in health care. And we've got to find ways to treat that. With managed care such as it is, I had to take my wife right out of the state to get proper care on one thing just recently.
Well, these are the many challenges that are before us, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today. Your perseverance, your passion, your compassion is amazing to me.
Thank you.
You have touched thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals with the work that you and Rella have done. I think your balance between family, faith, and profession is something that we can all learn from, and I wish you good health and best wishes as you move on to the next career or careers.
It will be. We could say the same thing about you too, and I thank you so much for an excellent time together today.
Well, I appreciate it. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.